Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for joining us on Building Greatness the Warrior Way, a Westcliff University Athletics podcast. I am your host, Chase Dodge. I am the Sports Information Director here at Westcliff University, and I'm here to take you through the week that was and the week that will be in Westcliff Athletics. Let's not waste a moment and let's get into it. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in. We got a very special guest for you today. We have our Assistant Athletic Director of Strategic Initiatives, but most importantly, our esports coach, Neil Bui. Welcome, Neil. Welcome to the podcast. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me on, Chase. This is my first time.
I know, and you know what? And it's just going through. We have so many sports here at Westcliff, and so this is a perfect time to have esports on the podcast, because for those people listening in that aren't aware, our Call of Duty team is going to land in Ohio. Neil, talk to us a little bit about we have a lot to discuss about esports in general, but the main topic I want to talk about is this trip to Ohio. What is the Call of Duty scene for esports at the college level?
Yeah, so at the college level, the Call of Duty is offered in various different national associations that are out there. One of the biggest being the National Association for Collegiate Esports, with over 200 institutional members. But outside of that, there's a sole entity that kind of is tackling on esports in their own way. So that company is called eFuse, and they acquired College COD a while back, and they are hosting what many players in the community see as like the actual main event to be competing in when it comes to College COD. That being said, what's happening this weekend is their grand finals. So they've narrowed it down from out of, I believe, almost 200 participating institutions across 4 different regions. It was West, Midwest, Northeast, and Southeast. Those forming Eastern and Western regional brackets. So they've narrowed it down to the top 4 of each coast. And now the top 8 are going to compete in person at a LAN, short for. It's a reference to computer networking, local area network, referring to how all these computers are on the same network, plugged into the same Ethernet. So we're not going to have players accusing one, saying, oh, well, my computer lagged, or the connection was bad for me, or we're playing thousands of miles away. No, we're all under the same roof playing against each other. This is winner take all, undisputable. We have a third party providing the computers. This is as high stakes as it gets.
And it's kind of especially like you said, with them playing at a live location, everyone's on the same network, same kind of deal. It kind of levels the playing field, but also most importantly for the listeners, Westcliff kind of broke some brackets in the CCL playoffs. Is that correct, Neil?
Yeah, most definitely. Like a lot of major sporting events, when it came to the playoffs, viewers, audience members were invited to form their own prediction brackets for who would place as the top 2 of the West. And many, if not, from what I saw, not a single participant had belief that Westcliff was going to be one of the undefeated winners coming out of playoffs. But we took down last year's defending champs, Ottawa, and then from there we went on to the finals, where we took down Texas State, really sealing the deal for us to get our ticket to Ohio.
And honestly, and Neil, I was watching that match, and it was the most stressed I've ever been watching an esports event, mostly because we're both Warriors fans here at Westcliff. So it was kind of nice being that heavily invested into the team, watching them claw back because they were down against the defending champions Ottawa 2-1, and then they just forced that fifth game, and then I believe it was that last search and destroy point, correct? It was tied, and Westcliff found a way to advance into the semifinals against Texas State, and it was unreal. Who are the let's get a little bit into the team dynamic. Who are a part of our Call of Duty team here at Westcliff?
All right, I'm gonna go in order of in order of signing, I guess. So it all started with a transfer from Bay State College. His name is Lucas Clark. He's from California, currently living in Reno, Nevada. He was one that reached out to say that, hey, coach, like I'm on a mission to play in the CCL. Like I would love to play for you at Westcliff. And I had recalled saying, oh yeah, I think when he was in high school, I'd sent him an email when I was like in my first year as a coach. And yeah, I was just super stoked to hear from him. We already had a college Call of Duty team here at Westcliff. We had yet to compete in the CCL, but we had some experience playing in NACE this past fall. And I just thought like, hey, maybe this is a good time, bring in some new talent. And it just became an entire regime change with him. No, not to regime change just in terms of it was a completely new starting roster. But we're happy to have gotten to where we were before then. Second, we had Lachlan Taylor. He was over at Texas Tech, transferred here to play on a much more competitive CCL team. He's more of one of our better search and destroy players. Joining him was Braden Haley, coming from Purdue University in Indiana. Very similar to Locke, another S&D kid, S&D star even. I know Braden really racked up some points, made some game-changing plays in the playoffs. I know if we could pull up those clips, that'd be great. But Braden's gamer tag is Stoners, not what you think. Lachlan, his gamer tag is Lock, and Lucas is Lucasi, kind of a reference to his name, Lucas C for Clark, Lucasi. And then rounding them out is their team captain, Bryce Brinka, coming from us from NorCal, went to school in Arizona, transferred here to Westcliff, and he has been a astounding captain. I think the team has really benefited from having him kind of being the person that I can speak to when it comes to communicating to the whole team, just because I'm not in there inside of Call of Duty playing alongside them. I'm more outside, being here ready on Discord to communicate with them, following up with what needs to get done, resolving team disputes, helping them grow as individuals. But Bryce is kind of my ambassador on the team in the game per se.
And you know what? And it's a perfect segue into my next question, because for esports, it's a little bit different from the traditional athletic competition in terms of practicing, where everyone can get together like on a field and start doing some drills, getting that cohesion as a team. What are some of the challenges with having an esports team? Also, like we're just getting out of COVID, so some individuals are still virtually learning. How do you coordinate practice time with that team being spread across states or even the country?
Yeah. Focusing on the positives, we definitely have a lot of flexibility. It can be a little tough coordinating with everyone's schedules, with classes, time that they need to like block out in order to complete schoolwork and anything other obligations. But like they've got it down, whether it's knowing which days they don't have classes, so they can kind of block out, say, hey, I'm free to practice all day, need be, or saying like, hey, after class, like we'll hop on, or hey, we have a match tonight, let's get a few hours in right before. So while it has been tricky, I think we've benefited from having the opportunity to kind of learn better time management, or just being transparent about our schedules and making adjustments when the need arises. That being said, even in these kind of remote opportunities, there is that missing piece of like, how do we build camaraderie, that face-to-face interaction? I mean, when you put down the controller, you can finally take a break and then have a resting point with the people that you've been grinding away with. kind of missing at times, and it's just not the same over like digital means, camera, voice. A physical presence would make things a lot better, but we make do, and it's really shown over these last few months this season, just kind of seeing everyone kind of develop a bond, and now we're going to get this opportunity to play with each other and be in person this weekend.
Um, and you know what? It's exciting to see that the reaction from the players finally meeting in person, people who they've been gaming with for past couple weeks, maybe even months, of just like finally in person of like, oh hey, this is the team I've been a part of for so long. I just want to transition, Neil. You've been part of Westcliff since, correct me if I'm wrong, like I believe 2018. You were here as a student, correct?
No, I mean, if we're actually going like way back, I did a brief internship when I was in college, just kind of perusing opportunities that were in Orange County. But that was a very brief, intermittent thing. That was not the West that we know here today. I'd say my first like real like working relationship was when I was a grad student over at USC, taking a class called Entrepreneurship in Video Games. My entrepreneurial project, it was I wanted to build esports teams. I decided to really scale to building a collegiate team. I reached back out to Westcliff. They introduced me to their newly hired Dean of Athletics, Sean Harris, and we just kind of hit the ground running. In that capacity, I was just a grad student, kind of understanding esports from the university angle, and then kind of making plans for how I would go about bringing it to life. I got an A in the class. Sean loved what he had here. He invited me back, and I just said, "Hey, let me kind of focus on school first, just because I'm going to USC all the way up in LA. I don't want to like juggle two important things. I'd rather like tackle one at a time." Kept in contact with Sean, kind of like got my feet wet with like recruiting, talking to students, and 2020 rolls around, COVID happened. I was scared that, like many of my friends in school, our offers were going to get rescinded or pushed back. But Sean and the team and the leadership were very receptive to me coming in May, like same month I graduated, came in, put those plans into action, realized things are a lot more different during COVID, and I was able to adjust. And flash forward 2 years, here I am.
And you know what, Neil, and you're also a member of our sports information team. You wear so many hats, but I mean, we can all see the passion you have for esports. I just want to let's just talk into for the listeners of like, what is esports and why is it being talked about? Because for my personal experience, like, I mean, I've been playing video games my entire life, but the term esports and going to college to play competitively, I think I've only heard it since I want to say like 2015, 2016. So is this still an emerging sport, or are we like solidified in kind of the public sphere of people know what esports is?
I think it kind of has reached a near critical mass to where it has mainstream awareness, but I think it's still in the early stages of getting that mainstream acceptance. Like for instance, people are still very divided on how esports should be written. I'm of the belief that you write the word esports like the word sports, so capital E at the beginning of sentences, in the middle of the sentence just all lowercase. But you'll see people spell like E hyphen sports or E capital S sports. But more than that, there's still this lack of acceptance by some groups that don't see it alongside traditional sports. But that's similar to whether or not someone considers, I'd say, like chess a sport. There's still that mental discipline required. There's still the practice. There's still like strategy involved. And for those elements, that is shared with esports. And for some titles that are team-based, such as College Call of Duty, you'll see that, hey, there is a huge element of team synergy required, as well as like individual, like, talent, such as like quick twitch reflexes, being able to respond quickly. So yeah, esports has been a thing for a while. It really took off, in my opinion, around that 2015, 2016 era. I graduated in 2015, and it was just crazy. Just because the year after I graduated, when I was just scrolling through social media, I heard about like, oh, my college has a League of Legends team, and we're playing Stanford. Like that is unheard of. Like I was there. I was working in the library. I remember seeing kids play League of Legends in the library, but it wasn't like a huge national thing yet. And quickly over the last like 7 years, that's completely changed. And I think it's only going to get more accepted as it matures. I like we're seeing professional athletes in traditional sports kind of like looking in, trying to see, oh, how can we get involved? Like you have basketball players saying, hey, I play basketball all day long. When I go home, I just kind of want to like do something different. Well, could that also turn into their next big career move?
And you know, and so you hit it perfectly. We were saying it's like it's in the public consciousness of everything. It's like, will it be accepted? And I think it will. I think people still kind of have, they're still trying to figure it out. Like they're not certain because they've seen traditional sports. They know everything. You can say like, oh, it's a physical game, it's a mental game. So people still are kind of like unaware of like what esports is. Also, esports isn't a traditional like soccer. We all know soccer, what it entails. Esports, you can play different games and it brings different elements to that match. Like if you're playing League of Legends, it's definitely different than playing Call of Duty or even say Rocket League. And so it's a esports collective as a one, but there's different avenues of games that can be people that can participate in. And so I think that kind of throws confusion. I was like, what's going on? But yeah, I think everyone kind of, especially with like I think with Fortnite and streaming, kind of I think with content creators on Twitch, YouTube, like that streaming kind of, I think people kind of like, that was, at least for me, that was my introduction into esports, kind of like content creation, and then going into competitive gaming. Um, I just want to talk to you, Neil. Do we have that kind of like streaming capability for our esport teams? And do we have any content creators currently or in the process in the future? Wink, wink on some recruits you might be coming in.
um, well, do a quick flashback. I would say when I in my first year of that very first season being a coach here at Westcliff, was breaking new ground. I was learning not just being the coach for the first time, but having a team that competes for the first time. So my first fall, I was like really in the weeds about learning competition, making sure that we were signed up for as many competitions as we could, that if I had a student that played one game, that we were participating in as many collegiate opportunities that were out there. And then in the spring, just I remember back in the spring of 2021, our university athletics department had made the decision to like, hey, we're gonna go into a non-competition spring season, and didn't want to like shake the boat. We wanted to really be in solidarity with the rest of the teams of that are part of our department and university here. So I decided to kind of switch gears, saying, okay, we're not going to compete, but that doesn't mean we don't have to do anything. I decided like, hey, I'm gonna shift my gears a little and invite all the players that have been playing this past fall. Hey, we're gonna focus a lot more on streaming. So I knew a lot of them who were active gamers in their personal lives, and especially more so during COVID. They were making their own Twitch accounts. They had the camera set up. Um, they were at least a little comfortable. They were open to it. So I would invite them each Friday. Each person hops on stream and kind of just hosts the Westcliff Esports Twitch channel. That has kind of went on pause as we entered the 2021-2022 school year, and my head was back focused purely on competition. But streaming is something that we're going to bring in. I just got a text message this morning saying our shipment for gaming PCs is on its way. So I'm excited to like check those out tomorrow when I'm in the office. We're going to have that capability. It's going to be a critical plan for what we do here at Westcliff, just because I always tell recruits saying like, hey, I know I'm recruiting you for a collegiate opportunity, but I really can see this as being your first professional opportunity in the world of esports, meaning, hey, I don't want you to just graduate here saying like, hey, my name's Neil and I have 4 years of playing Call of Duty. I want you to be able to say like, hey, my name is Neil. I have 4 years of experience in the esports industry. I've had 4 years competitive experience, but I also have 2 years of streaming. I've grown an audience from X amount to X amount. I have hosted charity streams, those sorts of things. So we're gonna have the capability. I have experience with it, and I can only see this like growing more. When I talk to students that are for new rosters, I'm pretty transparent. If there's even 1% chance that a student will be able to play their designated game, like right now we're building a Valorant team, I'll tell them, saying, hey, you are the first or first of two recruits for Valorant. We need a roster of 5 to compete. There is a possibility you may not be able to compete if we can't hit our recruiting numbers. But in that case, do not worry. Like, as if you're open to it, we will have you involved as a streamer. That way, you're still playing Valorant, you're still practicing, you're still wearing the Westcliff banner. And in this way, you're helping me out with recruiting. You're showing the world that, hey, like we're not just saying we're gonna get into Valorant. Like, we do have people here where they are practicing. Like, you can help be a face to that. And I think as esports kind of matures, that's like one of the unique things about esports compared to other sports. Typically, if you're gonna go play basketball, like, and you want to be taken seriously, you have to be really good at it and play at a highly competitive level. But in esports, even if you're not the best, if you have a personality, if you can build a following, those are skills and talents that esports welcomes and can open doors for you as long as you're willing to work at it.
And you know what, and Neil, also that's cool. You gave us a little sneak peek of some of that gaming PCs. Is there a Westcliff gaming room in the works by any chance?
Definitely.
Can't confirm or deny it.
I can't confirm. I'm going one step at a time. So we've got the equipment. Now next step is kind of figuring like where we're gonna put it, and then hey, the vision is to be like all the other big universities with their own esports arenas. I think right now we're starting small. It might be a row of computers, might be a room for the computers. We'll see.
My next question for you, Neil. We're talking about a bunch of games, but one thing I think, hopefully the listeners, this was our first official full year, calendar year, like esports competition. Because if I remember you talking, we had our COVID year where we didn't have any competition, and you just said, like, in solidarity with all of the teams that were unable to compete, you guys focused on streaming. So is this the fall of 2021 and spring of 2022? Was this your first full year of esports competition?
Yeah, it was nonstop, just tracking practice, tracking games, making sure that scores were reported, and following up on kind of like the coaches' documents that's shared in the leagues. Just make sure like, hey, like, did my team get the points that were submitted with the screenshots, and just following up with that. So
That's awesome. And also, I just wanted to ask, what games have we participated in or are currently in the works in the next season? Like, what games do we offer here at Westcliff University?
Yeah, I mean, to answer that question, which games we offer here, I honestly, the way I approach it is like, we are open to any and every title out there under the sun. There's games that aren't traditionally considered esports, such as like role-playing games like Pokemon or Final Fantasy, but those can easily be utilized as an opportunity for the streamers. As long as a student comes in with the passion for it, they don't even have to know which direction they want to go with it. As long as they say like, hey, I want to be here. I want to come to Westcliff, get my degree, and really get my feet wet in the esports industry. Then I can kind of like work with them and kind of figure out like what do they want to explore and what do they want to build towards. So with that, when I started, my first recruit was for Madden, and I also built a roster up for Call of Duty. And there was a period of time where we had players for Fortnite. Entering that spring, that first spring, we dived a little bit into Valorant with a few students streaming Valorant. And then starting this fall, we opened it up to FIFA. Yeah, so now we're just kind of like in the works of adding new games and not just saying like, oh, we're open to it, but actually getting students for it. Valorant is at the top of my list just because I think it's like one of the next hot up and coming shooters. Games I would love to have here is Overwatch and League of Legends, just because when esports was emerging, those were the games that really captured my attention. That I said like, oh, if I could like build an esports team, it would be for those games. But it's not about building what I want as a coach, but kind of seeing what students want and building around them. So yeah, I've heard from a lot of prospective students that they're interested in NBA 2K, so that's something I'm excited to bring here. I know we've got a great hoops culture here at Westcliff, so one of the things I'd love to see is having a stream of actual Westcliff basketball players versus Westcliff NBA 2K players and seeing what that looks like.
That's awesome. Neil, what a cool weird thing about esports is that, I mean, I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, it's like on a trend kind of flow. It's like which game is popular now, or which game has like kind of like is the streak in competitive scene. Is that accurate to say that some games are hot and some are not?
No, but most definitely. When I send out my recruiting survey, and keep in mind, I'm not a statistician. I've taken maybe 2 stats classes in my life, so it's not a pure science. But I can see from the responses I get, like saying, okay, like kids who graduated, let's say 2020, a majority of them are mark off saying, oh, I play this game, or I'm interested in playing this game. And the number can kind of start to dwindle as I'm getting responses from students that might be graduating 3 years from now. And when I look at students graduating that are in high school now, I said they're focused on different games. So it definitely ebbs and flows. It's interesting, like there's games that I wouldn't know without having these surveys that say, oh, students are actually interested in this game. It's like, oh, what, like Fortnite. Fortnite was the hot game that really took off thanks to Ninja, like when it came out, I think back in 2018. And it's still a great game. People do play it, but it's just a matter of like, hey, is the interest that a student has, will that actually last throughout college? Just because even a game is no longer hot, like I said, there's opportunities to stream, and there will always be competition for a game as long as it's built that audience. It's just like, hey, is it the size we want? Is it collegiate only? Is it only for professional amateurs? Like, how do we get ourselves in there?
Neil, I want to transition to, because I want to maybe flex is too. Maybe like want to start flexing with Westcliff. So for esports, since like we talked about how it's capturing people's attention, I want to say that Westcliff is one of those few institutions that don't recognize it as a club sport. Like we put it legitimately in our varsity sports on our athletics page. We treat it as just every other sport here at Westcliff. Is that accurate, that we're like one of the few that kind of label it as a varsity sport and not just a club kind of like a club thing?
Yeah, I mean, that is something we do. I'd say I wouldn't know if saying we're one of the few that does it, but it's definitely it's splintered across like colleges and universities across the nation. You're either going to see it as a varsity program within athletics, meaning you can coach, there's a coach, he can recruit, use scholarships. And then there's other schools that I've been a part of, like at USC, where it is completely club based. That means you can find some hot talent, but unless they get into USC and then they're a student, then you add them to the roster, have them go to the tryouts. So it's either, and then even with that, if it's not a varsity program, is it going to be housed as a student activity? So it's a club, or is this going to be like some joint effort by, I don't know, in academia? Like not even that. I think at USC, it was under the School of Computer Science even, or like in their gaming department. So it kind of makes sense. It's in the gaming department, but at the same time, it kind of is or isn't that. UCI is interesting. I know they do have scholarships for their program, but I think esports is like designated as a whole separate thing under like student life or student activities. So it varies across the board, but I think calling an esports program a varsity program gives it the recognition and seriousness that it deserves. Like we're gonna talk about flexing, Chase. I always flexing like, hey, we have the same access to like gym equipment, sports medicine, sports science that all the other teams have access to. So you don't need to worry about saying like, hey, how am I going to be viewed here as at Westcliff? Like, no, you get all the same rights and benefits as our other student athletes, and that only enhances the experience.
Oh, absolutely. Even when our Dean of Athletics, Sean Harris, or even some of us, if you're wearing that Warrior head, that Westcliff Warrior head, call yourself a Warrior, you're treated exactly the same as everyone else. We know exactly why you're here, because you are a 5Cs individual participating in esports, any soccer event, basketball, whatever it may be, that you're representing Westcliff, and you are more than welcomed by everyone across this athletic department and other sports. Neil, we're nearing the end of our time, but we're gonna go back into our Call of Duty team in terms of like, let's just talk a little bit about this weekend and what it looks like. So what this is like, so for context purpose for people listening in, I believe we had a total of 6 sports make it to so we had a total of 6 sports make it to their perspective, like kind of national tournament. Esports was one of those teams. How does that make you feel, knowing that you're a part of that? Like, because so Westcliff Athletics, this was our first year competing in for our sports. We're also part of the California Pacific Conference for all of our field sports and stuff like that. And we're also a member of the NAI, the National Association of Intercollegiate Athletics. A couple of teams made those national tournaments. How does it feel to be part of that in our first year of hard competition to make it to their prospective national tournament?
No, I'm super stoked. I feel incredibly, I guess, rewarded just knowing like, hey, all everything that me and the team have been working towards over the last 2 years has been for this, really. I remember talking to Sean and university leadership back in those early days of being in grad school and being prompted with the question like, how early could we get a championship? And I said, look, I did my homework. I saw that there was one school that emerged on the scene in, I believe, 2015 or 2017. And 2 years later, they became the League of Legends champions for the college scene. And I was like, well, we could definitely do that. It's just a matter of like finding the talent, putting in the hours of practice, making sure that they are fully functional, and we'll be in it to win it. And it's like we spoke that into existence like all the way back then, and now we can practically taste it. This is a matter of like, hey, like, can we do it?
To bring the audience back, our main focus of this podcast was going into this weekend with them competing in the Call of Duty CCL LAN in person. They definitely, we talked about earlier with six of our teams here at Westcliff making nationals. You guys, total underdogs, as we mentioned before, bracket buster, whatever you want to call it, with defeating Ottawa. I know Ottawa's going to be in Ohio as well, as long with a couple of other teams from the West playoffs. What do you guys want to showcase when you guys go to Ohio?
Yeah, definitely. We want to showcase that Westcliff is a force to be reckoned with. That, hey, there's some smack talk that goes on in the college Call of Duty scene, especially on Twitter. You'll have players like refer to other schools saying like, oh, like your team doesn't even practice together. Like, oh, your school's like just fully remote. Like you guys aren't even in person together. And those are just like objective, factual things to be said. But for whatever reason, that counts as smack talk. I think what I want to see is that, hey, despite those circumstances, that we like, so what? Like we are still capable of bringing our A game and being up there with other institutions, whether they are all able to be there in person or they have better equipment or whatever the case may be, that we are Westcliff and we are here to compete up there with the rest of you.
And you know what? And I'm going to be on that trip with you guys in Ohio. I can't wait for you guys to showcase what you guys have. Also, you're in that the top 8 teams in the country made it to this event in Ohio, and you guys definitely solidified that you guys are a force to be reckoned with and that you deserve to be there, taking down last year's defending champion, along with a 3-0 victory against Texas State to go to Ohio in person. And I know that I'm circling and saying that, like, how awesome this trip is going to be. What is the overall impact that even showing up to the event, what it means for Westcliff Esports in terms of eyeballs coming to our school and possible recruits?
Oh, for sure. I think with what we have achieved and what we are going to achieve this weekend, I think it definitely opens up the possibility for our academy also to be taken a lot more seriously. College COD, last year they had no academy division, so schools were allowed to enter like as many, or I've seen schools, Ottawa entered 2 teams last year, so they had Ottawa Black and Ottawa Gold. But this year, schools that had rosters of 8 or more players were told to make a varsity and an academy team. I think that opens up the door for us to kind of recruit, I don't want to say more aggressively, but just saying like, hey, if we find students that really want to be here, but their skill level might not be where it needs to be a starting player, that we can now provide them these opportunities. And like, hey, look, we were able to break into the top 8 as a freshly made varsity program in less than 2 years. Like, maybe it's worth coming here for academy, because I know some students can be like, hey, it's starting position or nothing. They won't even consider like the opportunity to be a bench player. But now it's saying like, hey, what exactly the difference here? Like, you're still going to be competing at a certain level. You're going to be alongside teammates that have had much more competitive experience. Like, this is only going to allow us to recruit better for Call of Duty, as well as plan for the future. Like, I know students graduate early, things happen. And I want to be able to have students that are there that, like, at least day to day, they're able to commit and say like, hey, I'm here for the long run. I'm here to get my degree, compete, practice, and be part of this team. And we can see that like over years to come, whether I'm bringing in freshmen that are going to graduate as seniors as captains of teams, or, someone that starts off their streaming career and really pops off while they're a student. And now that I'm building out new teams, like for Valorant, like for NBA 2K, I can kind of say like, hey, look, like, these games may be new, but Westcliff is clearly not a new school in the world of esports. We now have a track record of like striving to be the best in all that we do, and that is what I am expecting of students that are talking to me now. So no, it's weird for me sometimes, because on one day I'll be super gung-ho about looking for people that are not only 5Cs but are gung-ho about putting in the work to be champions. And when I switch gears and talk to streamers, that discipline is still there, but it's not so much about winning. It's a slightly different attitude. It's not about like, hey, there's only room for one winner. It's more like, hey, there's enough pie for everyone. We don't have to be greedy. We can just be supportive, grow, learn from each other, like grow our audiences. So it's a little bit of a shift, but I think just be able to say like, hey, I'm looking for disciplined individuals.
Now, Neil, talk to us a little bit. I mean, we're near the end of our time talking, and it's been awesome learning about Westcliff esports in general. Who are you guys competing with on Saturday at CCL Land? Who's your first competition?
Oof. I mean, Chase, we just talked about this, and
I know.
Oh,
I want our audience to learn who we facing off against.
oh man. So I'm trying not to get ahead of myself, but for what I was telling you, I had mentioned kind of Like the one that I'm really pumped for is Northwood, but we gotta take on St. Clair's first. We gotta take on St. Clair's. They were in the lower bracket of the Eastern Conference. So there was two people that had to go undefeated, and then there was two teams that lost one, made, and then emerged victorious out of the losers bracket. I hate to say the word winners and losers, but it is what it is. But if we can, once we make it past our way past St. Clair's from Canada, then we are likely to take on Northwood. And that is an interesting team because two of last year's champions from Ottawa, they had transferred to Northwood. So in a sense, this is kind of the more serious defending champ to take down. But if we can kind of punch our ticket, take down this year's NACE champions for college COD, or COD in the collegiate space. If we can take down this year's NACE champions for COD, then we will be in the the finals.
Yeah, we'll be in the finals now.
Yeah.
Of course, every game is you gotta win. You gotta win every game. You gotta win that game against St. Clair, and you gotta win the next game after. But two teams from our own West Division is on the other side of that bracket, with Ottawa and St. Andrews. Who, if you were to choose, who would you like to see in the finals if you guys make it that far?
Yeah.
Who's your top dog? Who do you want to be on that main stage?
On one hand, I want to say Bay State just because, like I said, our first COD recruit this year, Lucas, he's a transfer from Bay State. He had pledged to me he's on a revenge tour, and he's making his way there. So it would feel incomplete to our Cinderella story to not play Bay State. But in any circumstance that the West bests the East, then I think it would be a great matchup for us to have kind of our rivalry matchup against St. Edward's. We've played them in the past. They've the goat. I believe their mascot is a goat, the Hilltoppers. It would be great to kind of face off against the Hilltoppers, literally at the top. But if you're asking me, from the other side of the bracket, it's either going to be Bay State or St. Edward's facing us off in the finals, and it'll be a great match either way. I'm sure the team is preparing every day with practice, getting better, developing even closer together, so that once we see each other this Thursday, actually, the team is going to be all together Thursday night in Columbus, Ohio. It's going to be a great time, and yeah, just looking forward to seeing what can we do now that we're at the LAN.
Yeah, at the LAN, and you know what? And even hearing some of the commentators for the Western Division talking about our Westcliff squad going to Ohio, they were shocked, but they were just more, I guess, stunned is the appropriate word, on how everyone clicked, how everyone was on the same page and communicating, how it almost, like, as a spectator watching it, it almost looked like everyone was reading each other's minds in terms of like rotating on the map, who was going where, what, like different assignments. It felt like a pro team wanting to do work and shock everyone, and they did when in the Western playoffs of the CCL. Now, and just like you said, they had some time off. They had a couple weeks to prepare for Ohio. So I know I'm for one super excited to see what they have to offer. But just like all the other teams that made it to their prospective national tournament, being there is an awesome feeling, regardless of the outcome. I know we're all there to win, all that kinds of stuff. But I just, as a one person who had been to national tournament, working it, enjoy the moment, Neil, because you guys definitely deserve it. And you know what, we're just excited to this weekend to see what Westcliff Warriors are going to do at the CCL LAN.
Thank you so much, Chase. Really appreciate that. Yeah, it's so many firsts for us. Our first esports nationals, your first SID's first trip supporting esports, just because all these events, every competition we've had has been remote and has been hey, check out this Twitch link. But now we're going to have SID like coming out there with us for a huge event.
Absolutely, it's a huge event, and it's like, and I'm excited personally to see you guys in person and see you guys compete live in front of an audience, because I know, like most sports, when you go play at a venue, they have stands people can watch. For our esports team, like we have some games are live streamed on Twitch, and you may have a couple of viewers, but really it's like you can't really see those viewers, you can't hear them in your head cheering you on. So I'm excited for the atmosphere going into Ohio, hearing, like, seeing our team play and hearing the crowd cheer them on. So thank you, Neil, for being on this podcast. People listening in, tune into, follow us on Instagram at WestcliffU_athletics for more esports content, as we follow Neil and the whole Call of Duty squad at their trip in Ohio. Neil, any final words to even tell your team or the audience about this upcoming weekend?
Like the team, like I'm incredibly proud of the strides you've made this past semester coming together as a team. To audiences, fans, listeners, like thank you for your support. We can't wait to come back and bring home good news.
Absolutely. And those guys on the team tuning in, listening in, all we gotta say from everyone at Westcliff Athletics: go Warriors. Let's go. Let's get a championship, Neil.
Woo!
Let's get it.
Let's get it.
All right. Thank you guys all for tuning in. We got another great episode tuning in next week. Hope you guys join us. But for now, this week, it's all esports, all Westcliff Esports, baby. All right. Thank you guys, and have a great rest of your weekend and afternoon.
Thank you for tuning into our podcast. As always, a shout out to our Dean of Athletics, Sean Harris, our baseball coach, David Shermet, who made this podcast possible, along with our man behind the scenes, Brandon Peterson, for his production. A huge thank you to our Westcliff family for making the podcast what it is each and every week. We'll be back next week, but until then, please drop by the Apple Podcasts, Spotify, for any other previous episodes that may pique your interest, along with leaving us a review. It really helps us get the word out about Warrior Athletics. We thank you for your support, and keep an eye out for the next episode.